Welcome to Old World Rivals. All right, it's time to get crazy. I'm going to do two armies at once as fast as I can and make them look cohesive as if they're fighting in the same battle. And I want them to contrast or complement each other at the same time. So, normal person tries to tackle one army. I'm going to try to do two, and I'm going to try to do it as fast as I possibly can. My two favorite factions from back in the day were High Elves and Warriors of Chaos. Despite what other books may say, the OG rivals of the Warhammer universe are High Elves and Chaos. So who better to build as rivals? I can't think of any. So why two armies at once? Whenever I am doing an army project, I find that I get really bored about the midway point. So I'm hoping that having two armies at once will break up the normal monotony. Secondly, I like to draw the narrative of my force as I build and paint it. Having two at once will feel like the old school campaign supplements in my mind, where both factions are escalating and reacting to their foe. I will base and stylize both armies in similar aesthetics to visually tie the two together as well. This also allows me to demo game with another person if the need arises. So to start, I will do a single unit and a main character for each force. They may not be the best units in each army, but they are the iconic unit for the faction. So if nothing else, it will be a good jumping off point for the new armies. The only modifications for this first phase is that I made sure all the Chaos Warriors had swords, too.
Savor all the little emotions.
I had a few spares for my bits box to kit them all out. Not sure about shields or two hand weapons on these guys, but I figure shields look better, so I went with that. So on to airbrushing. So I've been playing around with different primers, different undertones for contrast-like paints. I just find having black down in the deep recesses is just a waste of the contrast effect. So I primed this model in the red-brown and then did the beige and a white zenithal before coming back in with this Iyanden yellow. Now it's probably just laziness, but been experimenting a lot with airbrushing contrast-like paints with mixed results. I find it is faster. I hate dipping my brush back and forth in contrast paint or any paint for that matter when I'm just trying to slap down base coats. So I figured if I just hose it down more and it pools a little bit, I still get that same effect. After the Iyanden yellow dried, I came back in with white. I just really wanted to pop the highlights here. Make sure we have a really bright yellow, white, gold. And I guess I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm trying to do all the metals in non-metallic metal here on this whole project. The main reason for doing that is I just want to practice it more, and I want to challenge myself to make a convincing non-metallic metal finish with very few steps. But anywho, let me get to this test model. When doing any kind of project, I think you should do a test model and kind of, one, get your color set, and then also get your workflow figured out so you can troubleshoot any hangups or issues you might run into, and then you can maximize your efficiency. So the first thing I was keen to do on these high elves was to do a freehand dragon symbol on the shield, and this is just with Flesh Terror's red. And I know the main concern with most people as they try to do something like this is there not being a true uniform finish across all the models. And my rationale with that is likely if some artificer or shield production elf was actually doing this, they probably wouldn't be able to do it to a perfect standard every time. They don't have a stencil or something, I would assume. So a little bit of variation or change in little specifics of it, I think actually adds to the effect as opposed to taking it away. So now I'm just throwing down contrast paints wherever I feel like it needs to be done. So Gilman flesh on the hands and the face, and then Gore Grunter, whatever, on the boots. Gorgrunta fur, that's what it is. So yeah, as I finish up knocking this out, I wanted to highlight the time it took. So this is a speed painting project as well, so I wanted to make sure I timed these test models to see how long it would take me to do the whole force. And there's some efficiency that comes out of doing more at once. Like on this, I'm switching between each color. I think I was able to knock out all this contrast step in about 9 minutes, but I was switching back and forth between colors and kind of figuring out what I was going to paint each part of this, especially the red, which parts I wanted to have be red on this model. Did I want to do the trim on the chainmail here, which I think is kind of the obvious thing, but did I want to do gold accents or silver accents? I'm just kind of playing through that. So in the end, I just decided to follow what you would think is the normal colors of red or the spot color on these high elves. So just hit those real quick with Flesh Tearers red. Now for the steel components on this. When I was airbrushing, I tried to hit each of these blades in a quadrant, so the lower front part and the upper back part, and then that's reversed on the other side of the blade. And when I put this Black Lotus down, I wanted to accentuate that as well, so laid the express color down and kept the darker part and then feathered it to the lighter part. Now step 2 of unifying both forces. So I wanted to do an oil wash with this burnt umber, and I just slapped it all over everything. Really wanted to tie the whole model together with this, and I did the base as well. So kind of in lieu of an Agrax Earthshade, but I wanted to make sure that this covered everything, minus some of the white. So I left the shield and the white robes alone. Everything else I wanted to hit with this universal dark shade. A little buffing out here with the cotton bud and letting him dry, and he'll be ready for highlights. While that's drying, I moved over to the Chaos Warrior test model. And shout out to Juan Hidalgo for these recipes here. He did a Emperor's Children painting video, and I mixed both the bright pink or magenta color mix here, as well as, I guess it's like the flayed skin recipe that he uses in that video. So check that out if you want to see somebody who's a much better painter than me do his thing. So another one of my things is I just don't like masking off when I airbrush. You can see I overspray all over the place here, but I'm just going to lean into this and work around it, use different tricks to hide my sins. So, like I mentioned before, this is a color combo from Juan Hidalgo, and I'm just going to hose these capes down. And for whatever reason, this is extra liquidy, and I don't know if that's something with my express colors or if I overthinned it, but it doesn't matter. I just hosed it down, let it dry a little bit, hosed it again, and it seeps into the recesses, settles fine. And I end up having to come back in because it's a little too tacky. I don't know if this is something with express colors or what, but both the cape and the magenta just had like a tacky, almost glue type of finish to it. So ended up just varnishing it, and it seemed fine after that. So a similar thing here is I wanted to come back in and pop the highlights with white, and just really want this to stand out and be bright. So hit it with white before I switch over to using the brush. And it's similar color palette, similar recipes with the high elves. So the only addition is this copper brown here. I'm going to use this tone to do all the gold details. So I'm going to do the exact same quadrant with these swords here. The only difference is they're going to be a little bit more distressed. There's more chips and dings to it, which actually makes it a little more forgiving when you're painting it. But put down the Black Lotus pretty heavy and then feather out towards the lighter portions. So following the same type of plan as the High Elf, I did the Black Lotus and all the steel parts, Gore-Grunta fur on the boots and the horns, and then this copper brown for any of the gold details. Now, I'm not really sure exactly what happened. They are bigger models, but ended up taking twice as long to do each of these Chaos Warriors. And it really goes to show that the number of colors that you do really changes the overall outcome. So the High Elves are really just two basic colors, the gold and the steel. Whereas this Chaos Warrior, he's got his magenta. I had to paint the gold separately. He's got two different colors on his cloak. He's got horns, he's got spikes. So all those different details add up to more time. So when you're planning a speed project, you want to make sure that you're accounting for all these things. You want to look for places that might be similar colors that you can just do the same. You can do a little bit of a difference in the highlights, but all these things add up. The more times, more color changes, the more things you have to do differently, the more it just adds to your time and slows your output. So a good example of this is I painted the boots and the gloves in Gore-Grunta fur, and I had to resist the urge to change to like a bone color or lighter ochre color for the horns. I'm just going to throw the Gore-Grunta fur down, and if I want to distinguish that texture or that material, I can do that in the highlight stage. And because the horns and the gold touch, I had to distinguish that a little bit, which is when I went with this copper brown. So I'm going to finish laying all that down, and then he's ready for his oil wash. So here are the universal highlight colors, the ice yellow and the off-white, and then this blue-gray color. Initially, I was planning on adding that fluorescent yellow to the gold highlights, but when I did it, it just seemed to clash a little too much. Maybe the fluorescent was a little too cool. I don't know if that even makes sense, but it just didn't seem to fit the overall feel of the model. As I kind of knocked out some of these highlights and whatnot and finished this oil wash stage, it kind of gave me an old school Blanchitsu type of vibe, and fluorescent yellow just isn't that vibe. So a couple highlights to the upper right of the model as he's facing us, facing the camera, and that looked pretty good. So then I'm going to move on to the steel portion of the model. And I start here with a little bit of that blue-gray, and then I just add off-white to it. I'm just focusing on the edges and those pre-highlights, those quadrants that I tried to hit. So it can go pretty quickly. Again, this is another challenge I set myself, is how fast can I do a convincing non-metallic metal. So I'm trying to do it in 2, maybe 3 coats, and just pop those highlights, lean on the undershades, and try to make a convincing non-metallic metal steel on all these metal parts. Another thing I did in the assembly stage is I made sure all these spears are pointed up. I didn't get cute with any of the angles or whatever, so I feel like when you see the whole thing together, all the blue steel points are up in the air, and the rest of the model is this very warm yellow. Admittedly, at this point, I was a little too conservative. I didn't want to go quite to the pure off-white, but as I knocked it out and I hit a few of these highlights, I realized it just didn't have quite enough contrast. So I jump in with nearly pure off-white and really hit a little bit broader section, especially on the upward facing parts that I wanted to have more shine. And I think this sold the effect much better. Now on to the Chaos Warrior. And I went full Grim Pink and I threw that on there and realized it was a little too stark, so I had to do a little step here. So I'm mixing a little bit of magenta from Vallejo and full Grim Pink, because you gotta use full Grim Pink on any Slaanesh models. It just fits. And ended up going a little bit more on the full Grim Pink. I just kind of go back and forth. I want this pink to pop, but I don't want it to look like a stripe or anything. So kind of make some mistakes here and there, but I think I get it to a point where it seems to fit. And then on the non-metallic golds, again, I just really wanted one or two highlights. So I'm using ochre here to kind of set the bright points. Try to hit the middle parts of the star and some of the edges, influencing it more to that right side. And I'm really trying to do as little as I possibly can to still sell the effect. So I hit some of the bigger spots, some obvious areas, and I leave it alone and come back to it and I just check it. I'm just trying to do as little as possible to still sell that effect. Again, this is more of a speed paint, so I want things to look good at a distance and kind of sell that effect without spending a ton of time cutting in every single little perfect detail and perfect line. So you can see here on the sword, kind of doing the same thing, just trying to dot, find those upward edges, just barely sell the effect. Just coming back and forth a little bit here, just trying to sharpen it up as little as I can to still make it look and read as gold. And it's the exact same plan with the steel, with these swords here. Starting from that blue-gray and just adding a little bit more of that off-white to it. I'm following the same type of quadrant setup I did with the High Elves. The brighter spot is in the front bottom and the top back. So I'm just accentuating that with a little bit of a 50-50 about mix of blue-gray and off-white. And I can be a little bit more haphazard, a little bit more jagged with my brush strokes, which is good because my brush here is, I'm just pounding it right now. It's not really holding the point. I was doing back and forth with contrast or express paints with this, and then trying to hit highlights and just be quick. And so I'm not being very kind to it, and it's not really working for me well either. And I'm going fast, so some of these highlights are a little thick, a little off, but just kind of slap some color down and lean into it and try to accentuate the quadrants and the little dings and chips that I see. And I can come back in and refine it later. So just goes to show you can get a cool effect without really going slow and being meticulous. Just got to trust yourself, and a little bit of variety and a little bit of randomness actually helps sell the effect more. So this is the point I slow down a little bit and really just try to make sure I get some really fine, small lines, little dings and chips and scratches in the sword. Chaos Warrior is going to take care of his weapon, but he's going to be using it every day, so there's only so much you can do with it. So here we are with everything done, just under 45 minutes. And here is the assembly line I have for the other 15 models. Here is the High Elf Hero model prior to the oil wash stage. I wanted it to have the same basic steps, but then I'd spend a little bit more time in the highlight stages. So one thing that was unique with this guy is I couldn't just do the gold scale mail with him. It was just too much gold going on. So I decided to pivot and do his chainmail or his scale mail as steel. So One thing I was keen to try here was just doing a band of highlight across the whole surface as opposed to trying to get each individual scale highlighted to the same degree. So I had to exercise a little bit of restraint and not go too crazy here, fight my urges to highlight every scale. And here you can see with all the steel done that I think it looks pretty sharp. Now, in the interest of this being a speed paint project, I wanted to give myself about 2 hours to see if I could really make these characters stand out in a way that still function like the rest of the unit. And this model here was one of my absolute favorites from back in the day. And it was pretty hard for me not to really dive in and paint this to maybe a display quality level, but I could always come back and add to it if I want, but I'm actually happier just having him done and not just sitting in my shelf anymore. And here is the first phase done. Just under 23 hours total. That's assembly and painting. I think both forces look unique, and they also look like they're about to throw down. So how do you think I did? What units would you add to each force? In later videos, I'm going to dive into why I picked each force and what my plans are for the future. So if you don't want to miss out, be sure to like and subscribe. And I'll catch you in the next one.